When most people think of World War II soldiers out in the field, the imagination jumps straight to the firefights, the uniforms, the tanks, the mud-soaked trenches, and ruined cities. But behind every battle, behind every story of courage or hardship, there was an equally deadly enemy stalking the men who fought across Europe and the Pacific. Cold, bitter, bone-deep, relentless cold. On the Eastern Front, temperatures plunged so brutally that entire divisions froze in place. In the Ardennes, during the Battle of the Bulge, soldiers shivered in foxholes carved out of frozen earth, armed with little more than thin blankets and whatever scraps they could scavenge. And even in the so-called milder theaters, Italy, Greece, the Mediterranean, damp winter nights drained strength and morale with ruthless efficiency. When supply lines failed or winter storms grounded convoys, soldiers couldn't wait for help. They adapted. They improvised. They survived using whatever they had on hand. Scraps of metal, leftover rations, battlefield debris, or simply a spark of old-fashioned ingenuity. And the remarkable thing is, many of those wartime heating tricks still work today. Even in a modern apartment, Ibn Ina will insulate at home. If you're curious about history, fascinated by survival skills, or just looking for practical ways to stay warm without running up the thermostat, these 9 methods are as relevant now as they were in 1944. One of the simplest and most ingenious methods soldiers relied on was the tin can heater. When wood stoves weren't available and fires were too dangerous or too visible, the humble can became a portable lifeline. Soldiers would fill a large can with sand or dry soil, then soak it with kerosene, alcohol, or even rendered cooking grease, saved from rations. The sand acted as thermal mass, storing heat and releasing it slowly as the flame burned from within. These little contraptions could warm frozen hands, dry socks, heat food, and make an icy dugout just tolerable enough to sleep in. Today, a safer indoor version uses clean sand, rubbing alcohol, and a sturdy metal container. The same principle, the same steady warmth, just without the fumes or open fuel of the battlefield. It is a piece of forgotten ingenuity that proves how a single scrap of metal could mean the difference between a freezing night and a survivable one. Another method resurrected from pre-industrial life was the hot brick bed warmer. Before central heating, rural families used heated stones or bricks, wrapped in cloth, 2 warm beds during winter. Soldiers revived the idea out of necessity. A brick heated by a fire, wrapped in spare fabric, then tucked at the foot of a blanket could radiate heat for hours. In an abandoned farmhouse, a bombed-out ruin, or a makeshift tent, that lingering warmth could be a small miracle. Even today, a brick warmed carefully in an oven or on a wood stove, then wrapped to avoid burns, provides electricity-free heat, the exact same comfort a soldier might have felt as frost gathered outside. Clothing, too, became a survival tool, but not in the way many assume. Soldiers learned quickly that simply piling on layers wasn't enough. How those layers were arranged mattered. Tight clothing trapped moisture, restricted movement, and actually made the cold bite harder. But loose, layered garments created tiny pockets of air, natural insulation that held warmth close to the body. When supplies ran short, soldiers stuffed newspapers between layers, used burlap or sacking as makeshift insulation, or packed dried grass inside jackets to create that crucial air gap. Today, the principle hasn't changed at all. A relaxed sweater over a long-sleeved shirt traps far more heat than a single thick layer. It's a microclimate you wear on your body, one that works indoors just as effectively as it did in a frozen trench. Then there was the Candelan clay heater, a trick born from necessity and resourcefulness. With just a candle and a metal helmet or clay pot inverted above it, soldiers learned to turn a tiny flame into a miniature radiator. The ceramic or metal absorbed heat and radiated it outward slowly. Warming hands, small tents, or cramped hideouts without letting a bright flame flicker dangerously in the wind. Modern versions use a simple terracotta pot and tea lights, and amazingly, they can still raise the temperature of a small room. In wartime, these improvised radiators often meant the difference between numb fingers and functional ones. Keeping extremities dry was another lesson hammered into soldiers by harsh winters. Wet boots, wet gloves, wet socks. They drained heat from the body faster than the cold air itself. Soldiers removed boot liners and dried them under their clothing, hung wet gear on sticks near small stoves, or used body heat to dry gloves when no fire was possible. Frostbite didn't just hurt morale, it disabled fighters. Indoors today, the same principle applies. A pair of warm, dry socks or preheated slippers can reduce the need to heat an entire room, because warm feet help maintain core temperature more efficiently than any thermostat setting. When conditions were worst, soldiers relied on the landscape itself. Earth became insulation. Windbreaks became shelter. A shallow foxhole lined with pine boughs or hay trapped precious warmth. Walls of dirt blocked the wind, the true thief of body heat. Soldiers didn't always have tents, but they had the ground, and they used it. In a modern home, this translates directly into blocking drafts, insulating windows with heavy curtains, and even rearranging furniture to minimize heat loss. By controlling airflow, just as soldiers did with dirt and pine branches, a room can stay dramatically warmer with far less energy. And then there was the oldest method of all: body heat sharing. Soldiers sleeping back to back, huddled under shared blankets, or crowding together in bombed-out buildings to keep each other alive. In Stalingrad in the Ardennes, in the mountains of Italy, men survived because they combined their warmth. Today, the idea still holds value. Instead of heating every empty room in a house, concentrating activity and body heat in one area works wonders. Finally, soldiers turned to internal heat. Hot soups, hot tea, hot coffee brewed over whatever flame they could manage. A warm drink was more than comfort. It was a heating strategy, a way to ignite the body's furnace from within. Holding a warm mug thawed hands, drinking it raised core temperature. Indoors today, it is one of the easiest and most pleasant ways to stay warm without using energy at all. What makes these methods remarkable is not their complexity, but their simplicity. None relied on electricity. None required specialized equipment. They were born from necessity, from scarcity, from the relentless pressure of winter warfare. These were the tools soldiers used when fuel was gone, when supplies ran dry, when the cold itself became an enemy every bit as dangerous as gunfire. And yet, here we are, decades later, still able to use the same wisdom, still able to warm a room, dry clothes, heat a bed, or preserve body heat, using techniques developed by men trying simply to stay alive. In an age of central heating and climate-controlled buildings, these methods may seem quaint, but they are powerful reminders of how effective simple solutions can be. History often remembers the battles, the generals, the sweeping movements on maps, but survival at the front wasn't only about strategy. It was about mastering the cold, outsmarting winter, and using whatever was at hand to create warmth. These old heating tricks are more than historical footnotes. They're lessons, tools, techniques that still work, still matter, and still connect us to a time when human ingenuity was the most reliable resource a soldier had. Try one or two in your own home, and you may be surprised by just how well they perform. If you enjoyed this dive into wartime ingenuity, the practical side of history that still shapes how we live today, make sure to subscribe to In the Beginning. Share this with friends who appreciate both the past and the powerful, simple skills that never stopped being useful. Because history isn't just something we study, it's something we live. And sometimes, it's the old ways that keep us warmest of all.